Have you ever wondered what truly happens when the divine feminine finally stops chasing, when she no longer runs after love, validation, or closure, but instead turns inward, choosing peace over pursuit? Many on the twin flame journey reach this breaking point, exhausted by cycles of longing and surrender. But what if this moment of stillness isn't the end of the story? What if it's the beginning of transformation? What if the very act of letting go is what awakens the divine masculine at the deepest level of his soul? In today's reflection, we will uncover 8 divine signs that reveal exactly what happens when the feminine steps into her full power. You'll discover how her detachment triggers the masculine's awakening, how her silence becomes the mirror that shows him his truth, and how her energy shift rebalances the entire connection. Each sign will guide you to see this journey not as a chase, but as an energetic dance, one that moves both souls closer to harmony, healing, and divine purpose. By the end of this video, your entire perspective on twin flame dynamics will change. You'll begin to see that real power doesn't come from holding on, but from embodying your wholeness. You'll understand that the feminine's greatest influence comes not from pursuit, but from presence, from becoming the living vibration of love itself. Stay until the end, because what you're about to discover may be the key to your own union and inner freedom. Sign 1. The divine feminine's sacred rebirth through surrender. There comes a moment on every divine feminine's path when she reaches the threshold between holding on and letting go, between control and trust. For so long, she may have believed that surrender meant weakness, that to stop fighting, striving, or chasing would make her lose power. But the truth is the opposite. When the divine feminine embraces surrender, she doesn't fall, she rises. She doesn't vanish, she awakens. Her surrender is not a collapse, but a sacred act of remembrance, a return to the truth of who she has always been beneath the layers of fear, expectation, and illusion. In this sacred moment of letting go, a transformation begins that reaches far beyond the surface. Her surrender becomes an inner alchemy where control dissolves into peace, fear melts into faith, and the endless need for validation gives way to a radiant inner wholeness. She no longer seeks approval or outcomes. Instead, she allows life to unfold through her. This surrender is not passive, it is active grace. It is the power that arises when she stops trying to shape reality and instead becomes one with it. Through this process, the divine feminine experiences a rebirth not of form, but of essence. Her energy softens, her intuition sharpens, and her presence deepens. She begins to see herself not as a seeker of love, but as the embodiment of it. This sacred rebirth does not occur in isolation, for energy never moves alone. As the feminine releases the need to control or chase, her transformation ripples through the entire twin flame connection. Her surrender becomes a mirror to the divine masculine, reflecting back to him his own need to heal, his buried emotions, his unclaimed strength. What she releases within herself, she releases within him. Her stillness calls him into awareness. Her grace invites him into courage. Through her evolution, he begins to awaken to his own. In this divine exchange, surrender becomes a bridge between souls, a silent transmission of love that no words can express. As she steps fully into her divine essence, he begins to remember his own. Her light no longer burns to be seen. It simply shines, and that illumination awakens him from within. The feminine's act of surrender thus becomes the masculine's initiation into truth. Together, they begin to transcend the old patterns of fear, control, and separation. Her surrender becomes his compass, guiding both toward a higher harmony, a union built not on dependency or desire, but on spiritual wholeness. The divine feminine's sacred rebirth through surrender is the first sign of this higher love, a love rooted in freedom, trust, and divine alignment. And from that moment forward, nothing between them remains the same. If you've made it this far, take a moment to reflect on what surrender truly means for you. Have there been times in your life when letting go felt like loss, but later revealed itself as liberation? The divine feminine's sacred rebirth begins the instant she chooses trust over control, and perhaps that's the very lesson your soul is whispering to you right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. How has surrender changed you? Or where in your journey are you being asked to release? And if this message resonates with your heart, simply type, "I choose surrender as my strength," to affirm your alignment with this divine transformation. Sign 2. The ripple effect of healing on the collective. When one soul heals, the entire universe feels the shift. Healing is never an isolated act. It is a vibration that travels beyond the boundaries of self and time. When the divine feminine begins her sacred journey of healing, it is not only her heart that transforms, but the entire energetic field around her. Each time she forgives a wound, practices self-love, or releases an old pattern, she sends ripples of light through the collective consciousness. Her healing becomes a silent revolution, an unseen current that touches lives she may never meet, softening the hearts of others and awakening their own dormant strength. The divine feminine's energy operates on a frequency that transcends the individual. Her transformation is not confined to her personal story. It becomes part of the cosmic rhythm of creation. Every moment she chooses compassion over resentment. Every time she replaces self-judgment with grace, she raises the vibration of the world. Her healing radiates like sunlight breaking through clouds, illuminating not only her twin flame connection, but every soul aligned with her energy. Even those who cross her path briefly are subtly influenced by the serenity and warmth she carries. Her peace speaks louder than words, and her presence begins to harmonize the space around her. As she continues to rise above pain and embody higher love, others begin to feel something stir within themselves. People mirror her frequency without even realizing it. They begin to act with more kindness, to forgive, to soften. Her courage to heal becomes a permission slip for others to do the same. It is through this energetic resonance that collective healing begins. The awakened feminine is not just a personal identity. She is a vessel of divine energy, a living example of what love can restore when fear is no longer in control. Her light does not demand attention. It simply exists, and in doing so, it transforms everything it touches. This is the true power of the awakened feminine. Her healing is not loud or dramatic, but steady and unstoppable, like a river carving through stone. It uplifts the vibration of humanity itself. The more she embodies truth, grace, and wholeness, the more the collective heart of the planet opens. The earth breathes differently when women remember their sacred essence. The atmosphere itself begins to shift toward peace and balance. Every healed emotion, every act of conscious love, contributes to the evolution of human consciousness. Through her bravery to face her shadows and her devotion to embody love, the divine feminine becomes a channel through which the planet itself moves toward unity. She is the bridge between heaven and earth, anchoring divine frequency into human form. Her healing journey reminds us all that when even one soul chooses to rise, the entire world rises with her. Sign 3. Transcending karma through higher wisdom. The divine feminine carries within her the ancient key to karmic liberation. As she awakens to her true essence, she begins to perceive the invisible threads connecting her present experiences to the unhealed wounds of the past, both her own and those of generations before her. This awakening is not merely about personal growth. It is the unraveling of centuries of energetic bondage. Every lifetime, every ancestor, every pain once endured becomes part of the grand tapestry she now holds the power to heal. This is not ordinary healing, it is soul-level purification, a sacred cleansing that frees both her and the divine masculine from cycles that have long kept love bound in suffering. Through the light of higher wisdom, she begins to see patterns for what they truly are, echoes of unresolved lessons seeking closure. Where she once reacted out of fear or attachment, she now responds with awareness and compassion. She recognizes the familiar emotional triggers not as punishments, but as invitations to transcend. With each conscious choice to forgive, release, or surrender, she breaks another link in the karmic chain that has silently shaped her life. The burden of inherited pain begins to dissolve as she integrates the wisdom of every lifetime, no longer ruled by the past, but guided by divine understanding. This process of liberation is not passive, it is an act of profound spiritual leadership. the divine feminine becomes a living example of alchemy, transforming wounds into wisdom and darkness into light. She no longer seeks external validation or control, because her wisdom arises from within. Her heart becomes the bridge between heaven and earth, and through her alignment, the karmic imbalances that once distorted the connection between the feminine and masculine begin to dissolve. The energetic pathway clears, allowing love to flow freely again, pure, conscious, and without the residue of old pain. In this sacred release, both counterparts are elevated. The masculine, once trapped in cycles of guilt, avoidance, or resistance, begins to sense a new freedom in his soul. Her higher vibration calls him upward, gently guiding him toward his own healing and remembrance. The karma that once tethered them to separation transforms into a foundation for divine union, built not on past pain, but on shared wisdom. The feminine's courage to face what others deny becomes the light that leads both souls home to truth. This is the essence of transcendence, to rise beyond the loops of cause and effect, to live not as a product of the past, but as a conscious co-creator of destiny. Through her awakening, the divine feminine proves that love, when guided by higher wisdom, can rewrite even the oldest stories of pain. In the quiet strength of her surrender and the radiant clarity of her awareness, true evolution begins not only for her or her twin flame, but for every soul ready to remember that liberation is always born from love. Imagine a woman named Alina, who for years found herself drawn to relationships that ended in betrayal and emotional abandonment. Each time she loved, it seemed to repeat the same painful pattern, a partner who mirrored her deepest insecurities and eventually left her feeling unseen. At first, she believed she was simply unlucky in love, but when her spiritual awakening began, she realized these experiences were not coincidences. They were reflections of karmic imprints passed down through generations of women in her family who had been silenced, dependent, or afraid to stand in their truth. Instead of blaming fate, Alina chose to look within. She began healing her lineage by forgiving her mother's pain, releasing resentment toward her past partners, and breaking the silent agreement that love must come with suffering. Through meditation, journaling, and deep emotional work, she replaced bitterness with understanding. Over time, the energy shifted, her heart opened in a new way, her boundaries became sacred, and she began attracting relationships rooted in respect and mutual growth. In transcending her own karma through higher wisdom, Alina didn't just free herself, she freed the generations before her and created a new energetic blueprint for those yet to come. Sign 4. The sacred pause and the power of silence. There is a mysterious power that arises in the quiet moments after surrender, when the divine feminine no longer reaches outward, but turns inward toward her own essence. In this stillness, the most profound transformation begins to unfold. The silence that follows her release is not emptiness, it is sacred alignment. This pause holds a divine intelligence, one that allows the universe to realign her reality in ways the mind could never orchestrate. It is in this sacred quiet that her energy begins to vibrate at a higher frequency, no longer entangled in the chase, but resonating in pure trust and magnetic peace. When the divine feminine stops chasing, silence becomes her greatest strength. She is no longer fueled by longing or fear of loss, but by the quiet knowing that what is meant for her can never be taken away. The masculine, feeling her withdrawal, does not sense rejection, but rather an energetic invitation, an awakening. Her stillness mirrors his restlessness and reflects the parts of him still seeking completion outside himself. Without the noise of pursuit, both souls finally have room to breathe. The energy between them begins to move organically, freed from the control and expectations that once confined it. In this pause, the divine feminine's silence speaks louder than words. It says, "I trust the divine timing. I no longer need to chase what is already mine in spirit." This energy of faith becomes magnetic. It draws the masculine back not through pressure or persuasion, but through resonance. He begins to feel her absence as a mirror of his own disconnection from the divine within. The pause becomes a mirror that reflects truth to both counterparts, a truth that love cannot be forced, only allowed. As the silence deepens, healing begins to take root. The masculine, no longer running from himself, feels the pulse of her essence, calling him home, not through words, but through energy. The feminine, anchored in her inner peace, becomes a living embodiment of divine trust. The connection transforms from a cycle of pursuit and retreat into a dance of balance and harmony. Each soul learns to move in rhythm with divine will rather than human desire. Ultimately, this sacred pause becomes the bridge between duality and divine union. It is in this quiet space that the heart learns to listen, the mind learns to rest, and the soul remembers its wholeness. Silence, once mistaken for absence, reveals itself as presence in its purest form, a presence where love no longer chases, but simply is. Sign 5. The Divine Feminine as the Sacred Mirror. In every twin flame connection, the Divine Feminine stands as the sacred mirror of truth. Her presence does not exist to flatter the masculine's ego or to soothe his illusions, but to reflect what lies hidden within him, the fears, the wounds, the desires, and the untapped potential that shape his soul's evolution. She does not need to speak loudly to reveal his truth. Her energy alone is enough to hold up a mirror that cannot be ignored. Through her authenticity, she exposes what has been buried beneath layers of conditioning and control, allowing the masculine to finally see the parts of himself he has long refused to face. This mirroring is not meant to cause pain, but to awaken. When he looks into her light, he does not just see beauty or tenderness. He sees the contrast between who he has become and who he truly is. Her unconditional presence shines upon his shadows, and what once felt like confrontation becomes revelation. The feminine's role is not to fix him or to pull him toward healing, but simply to be. Through her calm strength and emotional transparency, she demonstrates what divine love truly looks like. A love that does not chase, manipulate, or demand, but instead reflects and transforms. The masculine's awakening often begins the moment he realizes that her mirror never lies. Every time he turns away, resists vulnerability, or hides behind logic and pride, her reflection intensifies, not to punish him, but to invite him deeper into himself. Her presence becomes a catalyst, awakening the dormant aspects of his divine nature. The more authentic she becomes, the more he feels the distance between his current self and his higher truth. In this recognition, his healing begins. For the divine feminine, this role requires immense strength and grace. To stand as a mirror is not easy. It demands self-awareness, boundaries, and emotional maturity. She must resist the urge to absorb his pain or take responsibility for his growth. Her task is to embody light, not to chase darkness. Through her example, she teaches that true love does not mean losing oneself to save another, but embodying wholeness so completely that the other is inspired to do the same. In this sacred exchange, both souls evolve. The masculine learns that his real power lies not in control, dominance, or protection, but in vulnerability, surrender, and truth. He discovers that strength is found in authenticity, that love cannot coexist with pretense, and that healing begins the moment he stops running from his reflection. The feminine, in turn, deepens her mastery of compassion without attachment, standing rooted in divine self-respect while offering unconditional presence. Ultimately, the divine feminine as the sacred mirror is not a role of ego, but of service, a service to love's highest purpose. Through her light, she awakens remembrance in him that he, too, carries divinity within. Her reflection guides him home, not to her, but to himself. And when he finally embraces that truth, both mirrors align, reflecting not separation, but union, two souls, recognizing the same light shining within each other. If you've made it this far, it means you've begun to understand the sacred purpose behind the mirror of love, the way the feminine's light reveals what the masculine must heal, and how both souls grow through reflection rather than resistance. Take a moment to pause and ask yourself, what has love been trying to show me about myself? Have you ever seen your own wounds or fears mirrored back through another? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else recognize their own awakening. And if this message resonates with your heart, type, I choose to see truth through love's mirror as your affirmation today. This simple declaration reminds the universe that you are ready to see clearly, love deeply, and evolve consciously on your divine journey. Sign 6. The sacred dance of polarity. The twin flame connection is often described as a sacred dance, a cosmic ballet between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. It is a rhythm woven by the universe itself, where energy moves in perfect balance between two polarities that are not meant to oppose, but to complement. One leads while the other follows, yet their roles are never fixed. In every turn, they exchange energy, learning the delicate art of harmony and surrender. When the feminine stands rooted in her truth, she becomes the grounding force that steadies the movement of the masculine, offering him the energetic safety to awaken to his own divine essence. This connection is not a battle for control, but a rhythmic flow of creation and response. There are moments when the feminine nurtures, her energy soft and receptive, guiding the union with quiet strength. At other times, the masculine steps forward, his focus and direction creating structure and momentum. Together, they embody the eternal dance of giving and receiving, action and stillness, motion and reflection. Each learns to honor the other's timing, to recognize that true unity does not mean sameness, but sacred contrast. It is this polarity that generates the magnetic charge between them, a spiritual chemistry that fuels growth, awareness, and transformation. Through this dance, both counterparts are refined. The feminine learns to trust the masculine's movement without losing her center, and the masculine learns to act from presence rather than ego, guided by the silent wisdom of her energy. The friction between their differences becomes not a source of conflict, but a spark of divine creation. When they surrender to the rhythm of their shared soul, their connection transcends the personal and becomes universal, an expression of love's highest vibration, moving through two bodies, two minds, two hearts, yet one consciousness. This sacred polarity teaches that true partnership is never about dominance or dependency. It is a co-creation, a living exchange where both energies rise in mutual recognition. The feminine does not lose herself by yielding, nor does the masculine gain power by leading. Instead, each becomes more complete through the other's reflection. Their union mirrors the dance of the cosmos, the sun and moon, the ocean and the shore, the inhale and the exhale, each essential to the other's existence. In honoring this divine rhythm, the twin flames discover that love, at its purest form, is not possession, but participation in an eternal dance of harmony, growth, and sacred flow. Sign 7. Awakening the sacred feminine within the masculine. When the divine feminine fully embodies her essence, something extraordinary begins to stir within the divine masculine. Her energy becomes a mirror that reflects to him the forgotten parts of himself, the tenderness he once suppressed, the empathy he once feared, the intuition he once dismissed. Through her graceful strength and open-hearted authenticity, she becomes the silent catalyst for his awakening. In her presence, he begins to remember that strength is not control, but presence. Power is not dominance, but awareness. Her light calls him home to the sacred feminine energy that has always existed within him, waiting patiently to be acknowledged. This process is not forced. It unfolds naturally, like dawn breaking after a long night. As she continues to live in truth and vulnerability, the masculine begins to sense something shifting inside. The rigid walls of ego, the armor he once believed was necessary for survival, start to soften. He discovers that vulnerability does not make him weak, it makes him real. Compassion begins to replace defensiveness, and his heart, once guarded, opens like fertile ground, ready for love to take root. Her embodiment of the divine feminine invites him to experience emotional depth and connection beyond logic and control. What was once buried beneath layers of conditioning begins to rise to the surface as his soul reclaims its balance. Through this sacred awakening, he learns that to be whole is to honor both aspects of his being, the fierce protector and the gentle nurturer, the visionary and the empath, the doer and the dreamer. He no longer fears his sensitivity, but understands it as a source of wisdom and strength. The feminine's presence teaches him that true masculinity does not need to dominate, it needs to harmonize. He begins to embody a love that leads with awareness rather than authority, action that flows from alignment rather than ambition. Together, the divine feminine and masculine rise beyond polarity. Their union becomes an inner alchemy where each integrates the other's essence, creating balance within and between them. This merging dissolves old illusions of separation, revealing that both energies live within every soul, regardless of form or gender. The masculine's awakening to his inner feminine is not the loss of power, it is the evolution of it. In this state of spiritual wholeness, they no longer mirror each other's wounds, but reflect each other's divinity, and in doing so, they step into the highest expression of love, unity that transcends duality. Sign 8. The ultimate victory. Lasting union through wholeness. True twin flame union is never achieved through pursuit. It is born through the quiet power of alignment. The divine feminine reaches this moment when she no longer chases love outside herself, no longer believes fulfillment comes from another's presence. Instead, she turns inward and remembers who she truly is, the embodiment of unconditional love. Through her surrender, she becomes whole, radiant, and magnetic. Her heart no longer asks to be completed, because it already overflows. In this sacred space of sovereignty, she doesn't attract through need, she calls forth through resonance. Love is no longer something she seeks, it is something she is. This radiance becomes the signal that awakens the divine masculine. Her wholeness stirs his dormant truth, inspiring him to rise and meet her in his highest form. He begins to see love not as something to conquer or control, but as something to embody. The chase dissolves, and what remains is the pure gravitational pull between two souls, vibrating in the same frequency of self-realization. Their reunion becomes not a meeting of wounds, but a merging of healed selves. It is no longer about completing each other, but about co-creating from fullness. This is the sacred paradox of the twin flame journey. Union arrives only when it is no longer needed. When both the feminine and masculine have walked through their fires, healing, integrating, and reclaiming the lost fragments of their souls, they return not as half-beings searching for completion, but as divine mirrors of wholeness. Their energy dances in harmony, neither dependent nor detached, but beautifully balanced. This union transcends physical desire and emotional attachment. It becomes a partnership rooted in divine purpose. Together, they embody the frequency of unconditional love that uplifts not just their own lives, but the collective consciousness. This is the ultimate victory, the merging of two awakened souls who have mastered the art of being whole together. In this state, love is not fragile, it is eternal. It is not bound by time, distance, or circumstance. Their connection becomes a living expression of divine unity, a sacred flame that burns not to consume, but to illuminate. Through wholeness, they discover the truth that the greatest union is not found in another, but in the harmony of one's own being. And from that inner harmony, lasting love flows naturally, infinitely, and forever. When the divine feminine stops chasing, she does not lose love, she becomes it. Her surrender is not defeat, but sacred alchemy, a return to divine flow where control gives way to trust and longing transforms into radiant stillness. In that quiet space, something magnificent happens. The entire energetic dynamic begins to shift. Her peace vibrates across dimensions, touching not only her counterpart, but the fabric of the collective itself. She becomes the mirror through which the masculine rediscovers his soul. Every breath she takes in alignment becomes an invitation for the masculine to awaken, to step out of illusion and into purpose. Her stillness becomes the music that calls him home. Together, they no longer chase or run, they orbit in harmony, guided by divine rhythm. This is not the end of their story, but the rebirth of love in its purest form, where union arises not from pursuit, but from wholeness. If you are walking this sacred path, let this truth settle deep within you. Union is not something you find, it is something you become. As you align with your highest self, you magnetize everything meant for you. You are not waiting for destiny, You are co-creating it through surrender and divine trust. So take this moment to reflect, what does alignment mean to you today? Leave a comment below with the affirmation, I surrender into divine alignment, to declare your readiness for this transformation. If this message resonated with your soul, don't forget to like, share this video to spread light, and watch the next reflection appearing below your screen. Your journey towards sacred union has already begun. The universe is simply waiting for you to rise.